Hey RATBAGGERS, it's Jade. Quick guide today on Nightingale, well, semi-quick, on how to increase your gear score and basically get the right types of tools to go and harvest them resources. You'll have come across plenty of maybe ores that are level 50 or higher and you can't seem to break them down. Maybe you're crafting tools and weapons and it's just ever so slightly short. So I'm going to give you the lowdown, very simple basic guide to crafting gear and then talk about how you can increase it the various different ways. Find this video useful, leave a like and check out the rest of my guides and let me know what you want more help with. Let's go. So first off, a quick note about resources and the biggest change to crafting in Nightingale. Previously, resources would change on certain biomes depending on what realm power it was. So including the baseline, that something might be like the provisional realm at level 50. You could then go and make them realms harder if you wanted to, and that would increase the realm power score. And then certain biomes would only have certain resources. So it all became quite a bit hard to go and find things. It's all been simplified now. Now resources are simply labelled tier 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 up to 5. So if a metal or a wood is tier 1, you'll find them all on tier 1 realms. If you find something that's tier 2 or tier 3, then you'll only be able to find them, or should be able to, on tier 2 or 3 realms. You still might need a high level pickaxe or an axe to go ahead and mine some resources, as they'll still be much higher than maybe what you've got right now, but that's the idea, they'll still be technically a tier 2, tier 3 item. There are maybe a couple of exceptions to that where you'll find really end game quality items in special rock formations or mushroom variants that are basically huge plantations that you'll only find 1 or 2 of on a map. I do believe they're still relatively higher tier, but they still maybe only spawn on certain maps. Even the most beginner maps like tier 1 and tier 2. So, you've got some resources, you want to craft yourself a new weapon, a new piece of gear. These are the big tips. Everything you craft contributes to a gear score for that item, and whatever that yellow number is, that is the power item or the power level of it. So if your newly crafted pickaxe says level 42, but you want it to go and mine level 50, then you're going to have to increase it. Or craft another one and hope to get something over level 50. So particularly for harvesting resources, it is absolutely imperative you take notice of the yellow number in the top left, rather than any kind of melee damage number or any other stats the item might have. Gear score, like most other games, particularly loot shooters, takes pretty much all the stats and applies a mathematical calculation to give you what you've got. Bottom line, if you're using tier 1 resources, even only a couple of items, but you're also trying to craft something with lots of tier 3, then that tier 1 item is going to drag that gear score down. The higher the number, the better chance you've got of getting a better gear score item. There's various different armor pieces, weapons and tools that you can craft, but they are tiered now, so you'll definitely get a clear definition of what's going to be next and what you should be upgrading to. You unlock these by the blueprint system and with your essence, and some items you won't be able to craft until you've completed certain realms as part of the story. Lots of the items will have very similar stats, so it's more just about the look of it, but not strictly true. Some items, if they have 3 components to craft, like Explorer's Crop breeches, felt, thread and buttons, versus the NTC breeches which are only felt and thread, that does mean you are applying another stat to the item. So that's something to pay attention to. Go for items if you really want to max that have more components that you have to craft, but it will increase your gear score having more items that you're using. And then as you get more advanced, some items will have different stats. The majority of these trousers all offer just simply the same stuff: maximum health, stamina regen, and then durability and weight. Once you get into tier 3, this changes a little bit. Some shirts might have different types of stats in them compared to others, and these are like the baseline stats. So if you're going to make something like this, you really want to lean into what it's offering you. It's not as important as it used to be in terms of the gear, but it definitely still can help. So this Druid formal shirt has got environmental resistance on it, so it's a basic head start on you adding more environmental resistance to it. The Frontier shirt offers extra maximum stamina, so these give you little boosts and it's definitely worth paying attention to if you want to maximize a certain build. That said, you can now apply any kind of buff to any kind of gear, so if you don't want necessarily or worry about maximum stamina, but you do want to add more poison resistance or maleficent resistance, you can do that. You'll just need to use components that offer them buffs and they should directly transfer onto the item. Whereas previously in Nightingale, some of them buffs would be lost because the item never really should have had them buffs on it. These are small details, many people won't really care, they'll just be thinking, right, I'm going to use my best resources I've got to go ahead and craft whatever it is. And the main things are always maximum health and any kind of health regeneration or stamina, especially for clothing. For weapons, I would say durability does matter, so we're going to talk about that, how to increase it, but certainly you've got ways to do it without having to sacrifice maybe critical hits or any kind of other damage. So in a nutshell, yes, gear is now tiered, it's more clearly defined that you're going to be getting more. Each tier is going to give you a bump in its baseline stats of maximum health or whatever it is. So nearly all, but not every hat will give you some sort of magic buff. Shoes, boots, they generally have stealth. Backpacks obviously have maximum weight. So always, again, if you've got resources that say they're going to increase your maximum weight, they're going to increase your speed, then where you can, you're better off using them resources on the items that already have the buff, just to give that a real boost. So when it comes to crafting the items, obviously you are going to have to unlock a lot of the recipes to go ahead and make some of the gear. And then it's about choosing what type of ores, as I mentioned. Some that are going to give you more critical damage, more stamina, more health. You can make some really OP builds if you're focusing on getting the best resources that offer whatever it is you're looking for. So combining these items is important, and again, a bit like the gear score, if you end up using a tier 1 component, like you're making a barrel, but it's only made out of something like tin, and then you're going to be using tier 2 items for like the stock or something else it needs, like an action, then you will be dragging down the gear score of that item. I spent a good amount of time streaming and recording me going through and testing out theories on what increases your gear score the most. And absolutely making sure you're using as much as you can higher tiered items is always going to help. And my goal was to basically get a level 50 pickaxe. So I crafted a really basic one made out of tin and ribbon wood. These are all tier 1 items. But the pick itself is a tier 2 pickaxe, so that will automatically increase its gear score even if you are using tier 1 items. And it ended up coming out as level 30 compared to my level 41. That was actually a tier or a pickaxe that I got before. So if you come up short with any of your tools or gear and you really need it to go and get a resource, don't panic. Using the infusions, you can go ahead and increase the gear score, basically the yellow number. So I'm adding a melee damage, a basic tier 1 to this pickaxe, and let's see how much it increases it by. So actually quite a bit, it increased it by 6 points. It of course increases the melee damage percentage as well, but again, the thing we're focusing here on is the yellow number. So what happens if I go ahead and use a better infusion? Well, yes, it's going to increase that score again. This time I'm going for tier 2 infusions that you obviously craft at your Enchanter's Focus. So applying it again, and you can see how much it's increased by now. I'm up to level 42. So pretty simple. Basic infusions, especially for this item at least, have increased it by 6. And then a second one, the level 2, has increased it by another 6, so 12 total. And using a tier 3 infusion, which I hadn't actually unlocked the ability to craft, but I picked this one up from some reward, that gave an increase of 8 to my boots here, adding from 78 to pretty much 86. So simple enough, apply infusions, increase your gear score of your item. So what about charms? Do they increase the gear score? No, they do not. They'll give you obviously lots of buffs, but they won't add anything to that yellow number. Spells can be a great way to also increase your gear score though, so making sure you've got plenty of slots. By getting a tier 2 one, you can see I've increased my gear score by 6 just by adding one spell. So my pickaxe has gone from 47 to 53, and making the Oberon's bounty apply to it now, that's going to increase it over to 59. So on average, 6 gear score increase. So by adding all this stuff, we've gone from a pickaxe that was level 30 to now 59, and that's the max that you're going to be able to get this item. So you would think augments might have a helping hand in increasing gear score. They kind of do, but they are very minimal. Again, I went and made a bunch of exactly the same kinds of pickaxes, some with the actual augments attached, some with none. And they will give boosts and buffs to certain stats, because they will still give buffs to all your other stats, even if they don't massively increase your overall gear score. So the tool I'm making doesn't even have max stamina listed, but it is now going to add a flat 5 value. But when it comes to increasing your gear score, it doesn't feel like these matter as much. They're not going to do a bigger boost like you would have with infusions or spells, as they simply only give a buff to a couple of your stats. So definitely worth having. Absolutely make sure you use the augments, and remember it's a bit more simple. Some of them now will still give the same buffs and they can stack. I've got a tier 1 minor augment, which is basically the mining cradle, and that gives a melee damage and max stamina increase. But it will stack with the next level, a refined minor augment, which is the blast box, and that's going to give it another increase. So yeah, it does look like they both stack, so it's still both worth keeping if you're trying to optimize your tools and gear. You obviously check on the station traits before you go and finish making your item, that way you can see if you really are adding a lot more to it. And don't forget to swap in and out some of these augments if you have to, because your station might not have enough slots to take on board all of the traits. So to recap, absolutely unlock the best tiered items you can via the blueprint system with your essence. If you do come across a bunch of resources that you haven't encountered before and they're higher tier, it might be worth remaking the same tool again, because you'll now be able to get that tool above a certain threshold. Use augments. Go ahead and use infusions and spells to even increase the item once you've crafted it. Charms, not so much a big deal when it comes to increasing it. You can still go ahead and apply new buffs and ways to get new stats on items, but I still think it's important to lean into what that base item has. So again, if it's got something where it's got extra melee damage, or if it's got extra speed, try and find resources that are going to give you similar buffs, or at the very least something baseline, which most items have, which is either health, stam, or health regen. And not forgetting durability. Yes, you can find items that will give you more durability resources, but you can still also increase the durability by using a lot of the augments. There aren't a ton of augments for axe damage particular, although you'll find about 3 or 4 for getting more damage with things like sickles and throwing knives. That's because axes are kind of the main weapon for a lot of people in the game, since you use it so much gathering resources and obviously in combat. Instead, you'll have to use general augments that will give just either extra buffs or maybe something that's going to give you more durability. So focus on augments for durability rather than using resources that will give it. Also, because it's not that hard to get essence, and that's obviously what you can use to just repair your weapon, it just becomes a bit more annoying, that's all. And this same logic gets applied to everything you make, whether it's guns, whether it's melee weapons, whether it's pieces of clothing. And of course, don't forget, what you use does contribute to the colour, but now we've got the transmog system, you can always make something look a bit different, at least in the style of it, if not the colour. Not yet, at least. That's something coming in future. There are some items you don't have to worry about what resources you're using, so actually charms and infusions, they won't take into account any of the stats of the resources you use, so always use the most basic stuff. Likewise, any spells that you're making, any of the stuff you need like human seals or more, that stuff will not go into the final product. It's only the actual components that you're crafting to make your gear or your weapons or tools that will actually contribute to the overall stats. If you need more help, come and let me know in the comment section down below, and look out for more guides. I'm going to be doing more recaps about crafting and just generally giving top tips about what best resources there are for certain builds. Until next time, rat bags, I'll catch you later.